What happens when a decision to take a human life is no longer made by a human at all? That's the question Peter Asaro, a philosopher, has been wrestling with for over 15 years. He's a professor at the New School, co-founder of the International Committee for Robot Arms Control, and one of the deepest thinkers on the ethics of autonomous weapons, what some people call killer robots. In his 2012 paper in the International Review of the Red Cross, and later in his 2020 chapter in the book Ethics of Artificial Intelligence, Asaro doesn't just argue against these weapons on technical grounds. He goes after something more fundamental, the moral and philosophical problems they create. One of the biggest issues he raises is what he calls the responsibility gap. If an autonomous weapon system selects a target and pulls the trigger on its own, and it kills the wrong people, civilians or soldiers, who shouldn't have been targeted, who is actually responsible? The programmer who wrote the code years earlier, the commander who deployed it, the company that sold it, or the machine itself? Asaro's answer is clear. Machines are not moral agents. They don't have intentions, they don't have conscience, they can't be held responsible in any meaningful legal or moral sense. So when something goes wrong, the responsibility doesn't disappear. It just gets diffused and lost. No one can be properly punished. No one can truly be held accountable. And that, he argues, breaks something essential about how we've always understood justice in times of war. But it goes deeper than just accountability. In his 2012 paper, Asaro talks about the dehumanization of lethal decision-making. When we remove the human being from the moment of deciding who lives and who dies, we're not just making the process faster or more efficient. We're changing something about the act of killing itself. Human soldiers, even in war, often have to confront the moral weight of what they're doing. There's sometimes hesitation, there's context, there's sometimes mercy. An algorithm doesn't hesitate. It doesn't feel weight, it just calculates and executes. Asaro worries by automating this process, we risk lowering our own moral standards. We start to accept that killing can be reduced to a set of programmable rules. And once we accept that, it becomes easier to go to war in the first place. The threshold for using force drops because the political and emotional costs somehow feel lower when no human soldier is directly pulling the trigger. Another deep tension he explores is whether machines can ever truly follow the rules of war, what's called international humanitarian law. The principles of distinction, telling combatants from civilians, and proportionality, making sure the harm you cause is worth the military gain, aren't simple calculations. They require judgment, context, interpretation, and sometimes moral intuition in messy and unpredictable situations. Asaro is deeply skeptical that current or near future AI can reliably do this, especially in the chaos of any real conflict. He also pushes back on the common framing of an AI arms race. In his 2019 paper, What is an AI arms race anyway? He questions whether this metaphor is even useful. It makes it sound like an inevitable competition we have to win at all costs. But what if that framing itself is pushing us towards dangerous outcomes, like rushing development, lowering safety standards, and spreading these weapons to regimes and groups who will use them in terrible ways? And then there's a question of power. In his work on the social dimensions of these systems, Asaro points out that autonomous weapons don't just change how wars are fought, they change the relationship between governments and their own people. A regime with fleets of autonomous drones and surveillance AI could suppress dissent with less risk to its own forces and less political backlash. The threat of automated violence becomes a tool of control. So here's what I keep coming back to after reading his papers. If we can't hold anyone truly responsible when these machines make lethal mistakes, if removing the human from the decision makes killing easier and war more likely, and if the rules of war require human judgment that algorithms can't fully replicate, then what are we actually building towards? Are we building something that makes warfare more precise and ethical, or are we building systems that quietly erode the moral foundations we spent centuries trying to establish? Peter Asaro doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but he keeps asking the questions that most people in tech and defense seem comfortable asking out loud. So I want to throw it out to you, the audience. Do you think it's possible to ever make autonomous weapons truly ethical? Or is the very idea of delegating the decision to kill to a machine something we should reject on its own? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Really curious where people land on this, because these aren't just technical questions anymore. They're questions about what kind of future we're willing to accept. Thank you for watching, and if this kind of deep dive on philosophy, tech, and power interests you, hit the subscribe, turn on notifications, little bell icon. More conversations and drops coming soon.